Well, good morning.
Good morning.
It is a great joy and delight to be with you, and I bring you greetings from Episcopalians across this church, from Episcopalians in Taiwan and Micronesia, in Honduras, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Haiti, which is our biggest diocese, the Dominican Republic, the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and the rest of the United States. They pray for you, they continue to pray for you, and I would ask your prayers for them. I spent several days recently in a small hotel in Cape Town, South Africa. My hosts in that diocese chose the Palm House, which is much beloved by visitors. It's a lovely old house set on a piece of land large enough to have some garden space for weddings and banquets and celebrations. It's not fancy, but it's very comfortable. As we arrived, a helpful man rushed up and grabbed my luggage and insisted on taking them to my room. I discovered later that he's the owner. He lives in England, and this was his annual visit to check up on his establishment. I saw him frequently through the next couple of days, working with other employees, setting up tables and chairs for special events, unwrapping new mattresses and hauling them off to replace old ones. He was always friendly and often sweaty, working hard to make his establishment a home away from home for travelers. I found the same kind of welcoming, helpful attitudes from the other employees, whether it was early in the morning or late at night. And I have little doubt that their approach to visitors is the same, even when he is long gone and far away. Let me contrast that with another reality just north of South Africa. In Zimbabwe, the Anglican Church there is vibrant and growing, but it's worshiping under tents, in public schools, and in gardens a lot like those at the Palm House. The dioceses in Zimbabwe, particularly in the capital of Harare, are well endowed with beautiful churches, schools, orphanages, and hospitals, but most of their occupants have been tossed out with the help of the police. A former bishop named Nolbert Kanonga has taken over many buildings and installed his own people to hold on to them. He often puts a priest and his family and all their domestic goods into a church building to set up housekeeping and camp right in the middle of the sanctuary. Almost no one still worships in those buildings. Kanonga has said that his goal is to take possession of all the church's properties in Zimbabwe, as well as in Zambia, Botswana, and Malawi, the whole province of Central Africa. He and his thugs have beaten people coming to worship, locked the gates against them, evicted children from orphanages, and prevented Anglicans even from going on pilgrimage to the burial sites of their local saints. The violence has no evident foundation in theological controversy. How could it? He simply wants to control the assets of the church, and he has the support of the government of Zimbabwe. The Anglicans in that country haven't been reluctant to criticize that dictatorial government in spite of what they're suffering. Which vineyard is producing fruit for its owner? Which vineyard is producing any fruit at all? Perhaps the more important question is, how's the vineyard around here? We have our own challenges, and I don't think that they're primarily about who is in control of which buildings. I think the vineyard owner is likely to be more concerned about whether the harvest is feeding the hungry or bringing joy and comfort to the despairing. I know that there is good and faithful vineyard work going on in your congregations, and God's blessing be upon you. You are bringing in the harvest in your local communities. What about the larger vineyard? How's the harvest in the city of Peoria or the state of Illinois? We all share a responsibility as tenants of the vineyard called these United States and the vineyard called planet Earth. How are the tenants doing? We can't ignore the wider vineyard because its health is intimately connected with the smaller and more local ones. A friend shared a powerful story with me on Friday. It's an article titled "Cruel America." You can find it on the internet. It's a pretty horrifying statement about public attitudes in this nation. When people celebrate executions, when we're willing to hold increasing numbers of prisoners in extreme isolation, when the percentage of our citizens in jail continues to grow and is already higher than in any other developed nation, when we fail to care for the poorest and most vulnerable among us. Those issues are all connected by disappearing hope. The lack of hope does not produce an effective harvest. A week from tomorrow, most of the United States will mark Columbus Day. It was first instituted to commemorate the discovery of the Americas by Christopher Columbus. And in recent decades, many people have become much more aware of what the coming of Europeans meant for the people already living in these lands. At our last General Convention, this church repudiated an ancient understanding and essential underpinning of the occupation of the Americas by Europeans. It's called the doctrine of discovery, and it had its origins in 15th century papal pronouncements and orders from European monarchs that permitted explorers to take and colonize lands that were not already occupied by Christians. The United States Supreme Court recognized this principle in 1823, giving title to land to the colonizers and denying property rights to the original inhabitants. Our church is beginning a significant period of study about how we have used this vineyard in North America. And I would encourage you to learn more. There's a significant set of resources on our church-wide website, episcopalchurch.org. But please don't call it the National Church website. We're a church of many nations, not just the ones I mentioned when I began this morning, but the Seneca and the Navajo and the Lakota and the Cree. We are merely tenants of this vineyard, and our elder siblings have suffered much from the work of more recent arrivals. There's another vineyard that we're all responsible for, this planet. Most of us are beginning to recognize that the way we use fuel, particularly oil, is having a major impact on the globe. The extreme weather we've had this summer, hurricanes on the East Coast and floods, drought and wildfires across Texas, those are signs of what we can expect as the planet continues to warm. Thousands of people have been displaced. Many hundreds of homes have been damaged or lost. Yet this nation still has a reasonable capacity to respond and help the suffering, even if some of our neighbors want to cut the federal budget for disaster relief. It's always the poorest who suffer the most in disasters like these. Think about Katrina. People with resources left New Orleans before the hurricane came. The poor were those who drowned and died, or were shot trying to move to safety. The same thing is happening across the global vineyard. It's getting harder to grow food in sub-Saharan Africa. The desert is expanding, and so are the areas that are subject to malaria. Those who don't have resources can't move in search of water or arable land, and they're not so easily able to protect themselves from disease. We have a responsibility for how our brothers and sisters across the globe are faring, particularly because we contribute more to the warming of the atmosphere than they do. The landowner is asking for a share of the harvest, and we don't have very good fruit to offer. Harvest time is coming, even right here. I've heard a little bit about the produce of your garden here at St. Paul's and the crops that have been shared with the landowner. The same kind of hope that prompted that garden is needed in the larger vineyards. Together, we can bring hope to the people of this nation and other nations. The people of Haiti certainly have a greater expectation for the harvest because of your labors here. You have offered hope. Thank you. Our task as tenants and stewards of this global garden is to be fruitful and to see that the harvest is shared in a way that no one goes hungry. The guideposts of our faith, like the 10 Commandments we heard first this morning, they're meant to keep us focused on that shared harvest. Be fruitful, and not for yourself alone, but for the world which God created and loves so intensely. Be fruitful. Be fruitful and multiply the garden's blessing for all of God's creation.